Hello everyone and welcome to BH2 Studios and welcome to my first look and first impressions of this camera right here, the Fujifilm XM5. Now look how small this camera is. Just quickly, before we really get into the video, this camera here uses the same sensor and has the same processor as this camera right here. I mean, doesn't it look like they're just two different formats, even almost two different manufacturers? But that's how unique this XM5 is. And the XM series has been pretty, I say series, this is only the second version of it. And so the original XM1 came out in June of 2013. And it came out at $699. So that's 11 years ago. And most of us thought it was gone because the next version didn't come out till just last year in 2024. And it came out actually only $100 more at $799 after 11 years. So this is actually priced quite competitively, even compared to the original XM1 that came out. But the time that the XM1 came out, I mean, none of us thought this would come back, right? The XA1 came out just a few months later, and it was like $200 cheaper with the kit lens. And it was a pretty cluttered ecosystem. The X Pro 1 and the XE1 was out, the X100 was out, I think the X70 came out just a little bit after that, and then the XT1 and the XT10 and the I think maybe the X10 or the X20 was out. There was the XF1. There's lots of different cameras out, and I guess one of the cameras had to be discontinued, and this was one of them. But when Fujifilm announced this camera, we were in the media brief, and all the usual suspects were there from the Canadian media. And one of them, Nima from the Glass Eye, him and I were sort of texting each other. And when they announced the XM5, and as Fujifilm started going over the list of specs, which we'll talk about in a second, we were like, wow, actually, that's actually a pretty cool camera, considering how small it is. And in the media event, they talk about the size and the weight, but until you have it in hand, you don't really can get a sense of the size. And so here I have the TT Artisan. It is their 27mm f2.8. And the Fujifilm version is actually smaller. I just don't have that version. And so imagine this, but even more pancakey than this. And I think this is kind of how people want to set this up, as since the body is so small, wouldn't it be great if the lens is just as small? And people are kind of trying to make maybe like a poor man's X100. So this is the X100F. And so maybe they're trying to, but you can already see this is even smaller than the X100F. And so a little bit later, we will compare this with all these other cameras that we have out here. So it's $799 USD for the body only. It comes in either silver or black. The black one, either it's sold out or hasn't released yet. But B&H, it doesn't have it in stock yet. And so my guess is people want the all black version. The silver one does look pretty nice, but I think all black would be even better. Fujifilm's own XF27 f2.8 RWR is $399 USD. You're going to be $1,200 with this and the XF27, which this lens is not. And so $1,200, I think it'd be nice if they made it into a kit. Personally, I think it's just going to sell well enough that they don't need to do that. But the TT Artisan lens, this lens right here is $149 US. So if you buy this lens and this body, you're still under $1,000 USD. Another lens that I use quite a bit is this lens right here. This is the Sigma 10-18 f2.8, and I think it actually matches really nicely with this. In fact, I actually vlogged with it thinking, Fujifilm is saying this is kind of vlog-centric, and you could tell because, okay, so this is the screen on this side, but all the I/O is on this side. Now, in general, I say this is the wrong side if you're shooting this way. If you're actually a videographer, you don't want the I/O on this side, but they actually put the microphone plug in the back here, which is really smart. So sometimes if the plugs are here, the I/O is blocking the screen. So putting the USB-C HDMI out on this side, so the wires go out this way, is nice. And having the microphone hidden in behind here, so it goes straight up to your shotgun microphone, actually is pretty smart. And so I'm going to just insert here a little bit of a vlog that I did. Alright, this is my first test vlogging with the Fujifilm XM5. I do have the Sigma 10-18 f2.8, and I think it's perfect. I have it on open gate, so it's recording in the 2:3 aspect ratio, and I am using the built-in microphone, so we'll see how this sounds like. Well, we'll hear what this sounds like. And I do have the digital stabilization on, and so this looks pretty darn good, looks pretty stable. And the fact that this is a 10 to 18, no matter how much it crops in, like here, I'm at 14 millimeters, so let's go, this is 10 millimeter. So even if there's a crop, it doesn't matter because this lens is so wide that I can, the crop doesn't matter. So I think even with whatever the crop is, here we go. So this is 14, what do you think? Is this good for vlogging? Maybe a little bit wider, maybe here. So now this is at 12 millimeter minus the crop or plus the crop on using the digital image stabilization. And for the size of this camera, I think it's worth it. I think not having IBIS but having it this compact is great. The only thing is thermals, right? If you're doing a lot of video recording, it's nice that it has that fan option, especially if this is like a B cam on a tripod hidden in a corner somewhere, but you want to use the F-Log, you want the Fujifilm Color Science, you want consistency between your A cam and your B cam. This can work out, but this is my first vlogging test and we will keep on testing this for different things, but I'm pretty hopeful with this camera. So not bad, right? I didn't even have a microphone on here. There is no optical image stabilization in the lens, nor is there any IBIS in here, but there is a digital stabilization. And with a lens as wide as 10 to 18, even if there is a crop in when you're doing the digital image stabilization, you don't lose much. So I highly recommend this lens. This lens is not cheap though. It's $659 US. So I wouldn't buy it just for this unless vlogging is a big part of what you're doing. And so this is how I used it, either with the 27 TT Artisan or with this Sigma lens right here. Now, if you're going to compare this camera in the ecosystem, this is the cheapest X series interchangeable lens camera you can buy. The X-T30 Mark II is $899. Technically, that is actually a better camera. It has a built-in EVF. It's basically a baby X-T3. Like this camera, it doesn't have IBIS. It has the same sensor as this, which is the 4th generation sensor, which is the same that's inside my X Pro 3. It's inside the same camera I'm shooting this video with right now, which is the X-T4. But this has the 5th generation processor. So there is another camera that has the same sensor processor combination, and that is the XS20. But the XS20 is $1299, so it's $500 more expensive than this camera, but that camera has IBIS. So built-in image stabilization, it has a built-in EVF, it has a bigger MPW 235 battery versus the MPW 126 battery. Build quality is better in the XS20, and because of that larger battery, you're getting pretty much twice the amount of per shots or even video minutes time, but it is $500 more and it's quite a bit bigger. You do also get a little bit of better video specs. I just looked like kind of one for one. It looks like for video specs with the XS20 you can get up to 360 megabits per second, where this thing here is only up to 200 megabits per second. But in terms of the main specs like H.265, 422 10-bit, 6.2K open gate. And that was the thing that me and Nemo were kind of looking at each other about, is like, wow, they put open gate in a camera body this small, and they even, like the XS20, they put the little, you can see the 2 screw holes there, that's attached to fan, which then helps with the thermals, because this small, and it's only ultra high speed card slot type 1, versus the XS20 has the type 2 as well, so it has faster throughput. So we're thinking, how can you do that in such a small body? We attach the fan on here. So this camera is kind of, it's really hard to describe, because when you look at Fujifilm's advertising, you look at their ad, and you could tell right away who they're targeting. They have these young female photographers out in nature, kind of like young influencer, young content creators. That's who they're targeting, especially with the dedicated film simulation dial, which I wish this was just a customizable dial, but I understand how they're marketing this camera. And with the PASM dial over here, which again, the original XM1 has it, and I guess for this kind of target, it makes sense to have a PASM. Even the X-H2 has a PASM dial, right? But you do have this extra rear dial here, which is nice, and you do have the front dial here. So it actually has more control features than I thought they would give. And a lot of these buttons here are customizable. So this is the play button, but this is the AEL, AFL. You can customize that. You can customize the Q button. You can customize the quick video button over here. And so it is reasonably customizable, but because it's so small, it is kind of menu centric. And another thing I noticed is that as soon as this camera was launched, SmallRig immediately had accessories right away on B&H. So it actually shows you that Fujifilm approached SmallRig even before launch, said, hey, we'd like for you guys to make the accessories. So there's a really nice retro camera cage you can get. It looks beautiful. And so if you're already going to use this for a video, because that's what me and Nima were looking at each other going, this can replace my X-T4 in the studio. The cage is beautiful. They also have the really nice hand grip, and it's a kit. And so I've used their hand grips before. Nice kind of a squishy silicone. It has a built-in Arca Swiss type connector, so you don't need tripod plates on the bottom. So you can immediately, again, in my studio, just connect it straight away to all my rigging. But as well, it comes with a shutter button and the little wind muffs for the 3 microphones. So you do get actually really nice, and you may have heard in my video, it has pretty decent microphones as well. But that kit, I think it looks like it's a kind of a hot shoe thing, and it kind of helps to keep that popping out if you're outdoors and taking video. There's an optional thumb rest. So I think Fujifilm and SmallRig, they realize how popular this camera is probably going to be. And I think this camera will be popular. It will attract those content creators. It has like the easy modes. It has a 9:16 short movie mode with 15, 30, and 60-second countdown on screen. So that totally sounds like TikTok, Instagram Reels, and that kind of thing. It even has like portrait enhancer and background defocus modes, and as well as product priority mode. And so again, you could tell this is targeting that TikTok, Instagram influencer thing. It even has an 8 and 25 megabit per second small size format for quick transfer to your phone and then upload over to your social media. So clearly this is meant for kind of like beginners, but as well as those that are doing social media. But even for someone like myself and Nima, we could see, like for me, I can use this as an A-cam for this kind of video, because I've been using my X-T4 for almost the past 5 years now as my studio overhead, talking head, and product photography. Well, this has the same sensor as the X-T4, has the latest processor as the X-H2, so it has all the new film sims and has all the new features that you get with the 5th generation processor. And so for $799 USD, this is actually a pretty smoking deal. And so at this point, let's start comparing. So again, as I started off, X-H2 with the new 16 to 55 f2.8. I mean, take a look at that. Now, of course, this has built-in IBIS, dual card slot, weather sealed. It has the Pro f2.8 zoom lens on here. It has a beautiful EVF. It has a 40 megapixel sensor, but it's still APS-C. It's the same size sensor. So I mean, look at the size difference. When I go out, I mean, look, I'm palming this camera. In fact, I can hide it in my hand, right? It's so small. And so this is amazing. Now, one thing is the original XM1 had a built-in pop-up flash on this side, and it had an articulating screen closer to the X70. So this is X70, not exactly this, but it had a normal articulating screen. Now look at this. Now for a stills photographer, the X70 is more ideal. This here with the swing out, great for content creators because you can face it towards yourself and record video, and I would use it like this as well. But for stills photography, I found it a pain to shoot it outside, so I just kept it in this way and shot like this. There's no need to swing it out for me. But I mean, look at the size here. I mean, this reminds me of basically an X70, other than the way the screen works. I mean, look at that. Look at the size between these two. And that's kind of what the X70 versus the XM1 was. The XM1 was basically an X70, but with an interchangeable lens. And that's kind of what you're getting with this camera right here. So that's the size difference here. Now, here is the X30. This, I'll leave the link down below. I wrote a full article, I think it was like 10 years later or something, where I re-reviewed the X30. I love this camera. 2/3 inch sensor, so it is a small sensor, but I mean, look at this. Look at the size difference between these cameras. It's barely, from the front here, it's actually, the XM5 is actually narrower than the X30. Right? Look at that. Now this does have a built-in lens. It does have a 28 to 112 full frame equivalent built-in zoom. It has the normal kind of articulating screen, so for stills photographer, we love this. And this is kind of all in one, and it's a beautiful design. And this also is kind of like, it's just barely pocketable, but I mean, great on vacation, great to have always with you. But I mean, look at this. This is pretty much the same size as the X30. Now here is, again, another comparison here. This is the Leica D-Lux 8. Again, completely different cameras, micro four thirds sensor, a built-in 24 to 75 full frame equivalent f1.7 to f2.8 zoom lens. But again, in terms of like all intents and purposes as you're walking around on vacation or whatever, I mean, look how small this is. Now, by the time you put a zoom lens on here, all right, let's just do that right now. Let's put something, this is a Sigma, right? Sigma 18 to 55 f2.8. This is actually a really nice compact zoom lens. I would not want to put this lens on here, the 16 to 55. So you can see still a size difference between these two are, but now you're starting to keep this as compact as possible. I think most people are trying to probably put something like the XF27 or the XF18, something light and compact, or even maybe a manual focus lens, something small like a Voigtlander 18 f2.8 type of a compact lens. But again, this is just for size comparison. If you're just talking about size, I mean, look how small this is. APS-C. Even my X Pro 3, which is not huge. Now again, this is weather sealed, professional build, titanium top and bottom plate, dual card slot, but this has the same sensor as this. So if you have the same lens, you're pretty much getting the same image quality, but again, look at the size difference. Pretty huge difference. Now to me, I'm willing to carry this camera around with me all day. And I think most people are willing to carry even a camera like the X100 series with them all day. But again, if you're looking at it, same sensor size. This obviously has way more features, especially the newer X100 version with a regular articulating screen, with built-in IBIS, with a hybrid viewfinder, with mostly weather sealed. And so very different type of camera, but if you just want compact size and a really capable compact video camera, and this is very unique, right? It has 6.2 open gate, which only the XS20 and the X-H2S has that so far in the X series. So having that is just amazing in a camera this small. Now this is the Ricoh GR. I do have a square hood on there. This is just to show you, look, this is how I shoot with this camera here. So it's still about the same size. Right? If I take the hood off, obviously the GR3 will be a smaller camera. But again, when I grab a camera and go out, this doesn't have an EVF either. Neither is this. The screen does not articulate. This at least does, even if it's out and sideways. But again, it's not much of a difference carrying this all day versus this, although this is much lighter. And just to show you how much I appreciate light, compact, small bodies, I wanted to show you, I talk about this camera all the time. This is my Ricoh GR1 that I've had since 1998. I bought this just before going on my honeymoon with Camera Girl. And so I've always loved small, light, compact cameras. On my honeymoon, I had my big SLR with me, my film SLR, but I took this camera with me for kind of like pictures at dinner. We went to shows. I just took this camera with me. But this is how much I love compact cameras. And so this is a modern compact camera right here. I'm going to show you one of my oldest cameras that I bought with my own money. This Pentax SPL Mini, or UC1 that was called in the US. This camera I bought in 1993, 1994. I was still dating Camera Girl. This camera is 30 years old. I've always loved point-and-shoot cameras. I always loved cameras that, even though it may have lacked some features, because of its size and weight, it allowed me to carry these tools with me anywhere I went. So if you want a powerful stills camera with some inconveniences because there's no built-in EVF, there's no built-in flash, but look how small this is, and you want a powerful video camera, H.265, 6.2K, open gate, 422, 200 megabits per second, you can have it in a camera that pretty much fits in the palm of your hand. But this is also interchangeable lens. So sure, it might look silly, but you can attach this lens on here, you can attach a 500mm f5.6, whatever lens you have, you can attach to this, but when you want to go out and about and keep it simple, put on a pancake lens, or as I showed you before, I had this here. Let's just put this on here too. For vlogging, this lens here, even though the lens is almost the same price, $659 for this lens, now you have a 10 to 18 millimeter zoom lens. And when you do the digital stab, which is only in video mode, which is kind of a shame, but for video only, you saw the quality of the video that I did, just kind of basically like this, and I held it like this. No external microphones, nothing. This is a pretty powerful video kit right here. Even if it crops in for digital stabilization, this is a very powerful kit. And so I'm actually really excited that Fujifilm came out with this camera. And last year when I wrote an article for Fujilove, I basically said, look, the XM5, the X-T50 were not like the X Pro 4 that we're hoping for. It wasn't the X-T6 that people maybe were hoping for. These are, I wouldn't call them boring cameras, but they're compact, lightweight, and reasonably priced. And I think Fujifilm is going the right direction. Because when you look at a camera like this, and then you look at a camera like this, I think when you get to this size, most people are like, I'm going to just use Sony, or I'm going to just use Canon, I'm going to use Nikon. But when you think of Fujifilm, you either think retro styling, right? Like, no Sony can compete with this. No Sony can compete with this. No Canon. This is such a unique camera. And I would even argue, same with the X Pro series, what Sony can really, maybe the A7C series, maybe, but this is way cooler. Hybrid viewfinder. I mean, this is, titanium top and bottom plate, reverse screen. It's really hard to compare cameras with this. And same with this. There are some Sonys and other cameras that people are comparing this to, but, it's hard to compare with this. This is such a unique camera. So, bravo to Fujifilm for making these type of cameras for all sorts of creators. I know the way they're marketing this is for like entry-level consumer content creators, but I think serious videographers, serious content creators can also use this as a B cam, or when they need to have something small and compact and maybe discreet. If you took this into a concert versus something like this, they would probably confiscate this, but if you put a pancake on here, you put a pancake like this, and then you went into a concert with this, especially if you can palm this camera like this, I don't think anyone's gonna stop you. I think this is great. One thing is, it's really small. I recommend to get that small rig grip because I don't have huge hands and I found it a little bit irritating. I mean, the whole back is just this little space here and then the rest of it is just screen. And like I said, I don't like shooting with this out like this. If you're a stills photographer, it's kind of a pain to be like that. So you're pretty much shooting it like this all the time. So there's almost no grip. So get that grip or get a half leather case, and you could use this for street style photography as well as for video work. And so thank you so much for watching. Let me know if you have any questions down below. We'll talk to you soon, and happy shooting.